It was a sunny afternoon when Alex, a 17-year-old teenager, walked home from school. The day seemed like any other, with the usual chatter of kids in the streets, birds chirping, and the sound of cars zooming by. Alex liked these quiet walks. They gave him time to think, to clear his mind after a long school day. He lived in a small, quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and things were mostly calm. As he passed by the old park near his house, he noticed something unusual. There was an elderly couple near the entrance, struggling with a heavy load of grocery bags. The man was bent over, his face wrinkled and pale, trying to lift the bags. The woman, much older, looked like she was about to collapse. She was holding her side, trying to catch her breath. Alex immediately noticed that something was wrong. The couple was moving slowly, and it seemed like they were having trouble even standing up. Alex's heart softened. He wasn't one to ignore people in need, especially not an elderly couple. Without thinking twice, he walked over to them, a smile on his face. "Hey, can I help you with those?" he asked, his voice gentle. The old man looked up at him, his eyes wide with surprise. "Oh, you don't have to, son," he said, his voice shaky. "We're fine, just a little tired." But Alex could tell they weren't fine. The bags they were carrying were far too heavy for them. The man's hands trembled as he adjusted his grip on the handles. The woman stood silently, her face a mix of exhaustion and gratitude. "Please," Alex said, "let me help you. You shouldn't be carrying all this on your own." Without waiting for their reply, Alex gently took the grocery bags from the elderly man's hands. As he did, he noticed how frail the man seemed, his clothes old and faded. The woman, on the other hand, had tears in her eyes, though she smiled weakly at him. "Thank you, young man," the woman said softly. "You're very kind." Alex smiled back, a little embarrassed. "It's no problem. I'm happy to help." As they walked slowly toward their home, Alex noticed that the elderly couple lived in a small, run-down house at the end of the street. It wasn't the nicest house, and it looked like it could use some repairs. There were cracks in the windows, and the front yard was overgrown with weeds. The couple didn't seem to mind, though. They moved slowly but with determination, as if they had grown used to the hardship. "Is it far?" Alex asked, looking at the house. "It's just a little further," the old man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't usually go out much these days, but sometimes we have to." Alex didn't know what else to say, so he just nodded, quietly walking beside them. As they reached the front door, the woman turned to him with a grateful expression. "You've been such a help," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Alex was about to say something when he heard a noise. It was the sound of a car engine, a low hum. He turned quickly to see a black car parked across the street. The driver's side window was tinted, so he couldn't see who was inside. It wasn't unusual to see cars in the neighborhood, but this one stood out. It was parked far longer than any other car would usually stay. The elderly couple seemed to notice it too. The woman's smile faded for a moment, and the old man's expression became more serious. Alex, unsure of what he had just seen, looked back at the couple. "Is everything okay?" he asked, a little concerned. The old man gave him a tight smile. Yes, everything is fine," he said, but his voice lacked the usual warmth. There was something in his eyes, something Alex couldn't quite place. He didn't ask any more questions, deciding not to press further. The elderly couple thanked him once again before entering their house. Alex watched them disappear inside before he slowly walked away, his mind racing. That black car hadn't seemed right, but why would it be there? He shook his head, trying to forget about it. The day was still young, and he had his own life to worry about. As he walked back home, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was happening. Maybe it was nothing, just his imagination playing tricks. But the black car, the couple's strange reaction, and that feeling of unease stuck with him. Unbeknownst to Alex, this small act of kindness would change his life forever. Little did he know, the next day, everything would be different. The evening was quiet, and Alex was sitting at his desk in his room, finishing up his homework. He glanced out the window occasionally, his mind still wandering back to the strange encounter with the elderly couple and that black car. He had tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered like an itch he couldn't scratch. It felt odd, like he was being watched. He laughed it off. After all, it was probably just his imagination. The soft hum of his computer was the only sound in the room as he typed out the last few sentences for his history assignment. His phone buzzed suddenly on the desk, making him jump. He glanced at the screen, expecting it to be a message from his friend Jason about some weekend plans, but instead, it was a call from a private number. Alex hesitated for a moment. He didn't like answering calls from unknown numbers, but curiosity got the best of him. He picked up the phone and pressed it to his ear. "Hello," he said, trying to sound casual. There was silence for a moment on the other end of the line. Then a muffled voice, deep and low, crackled through the speaker. "You don't know who you're dealing with," the voice said, its tone urgent but laced with something cold. "Stay away from them. You've already done enough." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He gripped the phone tighter, his heart beginning to race. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "What do you mean? Who are you talking about?" The voice didn't answer right away. Instead, there was a strange rustling sound, like someone was moving around or shifting papers. The voice then spoke again, even quieter this time. "Don't get involved," it warned. "You don't know what you've just stepped into. The next time you help them, it will be too late." Before Alex could respond, the line went dead. A loud beep echoed in his ear, signaling the end of the call. His heart pounded in his chest, and he stared at the phone in disbelief. What had just happened? Was it some kind of prank? He was used to annoying robocalls, but this felt different. The voice was too serious, too urgent, and the words it spoke made no sense. "Stay away from them." Who? He wondered. His thoughts were racing as he sat there, frozen for a moment. He thought back to the elderly couple. Was someone threatening them? Had he gotten too involved by simply helping them with their groceries? Could this be some kind of danger? Alex's mind raced with 1,000 questions, but there was no answer. He had no idea who could have called or what they meant by their cryptic warning. He decided to shrug it off, convinced that it had to be a joke. But deep down, there was a nagging feeling, a sense that this was more than just a prank. Maybe the mysterious voice was right. Maybe he didn't know what he had stepped into. Still, Alex tried to push the thought aside. He had more important things to focus on, like his schoolwork. Besides, it was probably nothing. But just as he was about to set the phone down, something caught his eye. He glanced out the window again, and for a split second, he saw it. A black car. It was the same one from earlier, the one he had seen parked across the street from the elderly couple's house. The car was parked there again, its tinted windows making it impossible to see who was inside. But this time, it was closer, right across the street from Alex's house. The engine was idling, and Alex could hear it from his room. His stomach tightened. What is going on? His mind raced. The warning, the call, the black car. It all seemed connected somehow. But how? Why? Alex didn't know, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a coincidence. Something strange was unfolding, and it was getting more unsettling by the second. As he stood by the window, watching the car, he felt a sense of dread creeping over him. He wanted to turn away, to forget about it all, but he couldn't. The mystery was growing, and whether he liked it or not, Alex was now a part of something bigger than he could have imagined. With his heart pounding, Alex slowly backed away from the window, his thoughts swirling. Who had warned him? What did they mean by the next time you help them? The world outside seemed quiet, but for Alex, everything was changing. Something was coming, something dark, and it was coming for him. The next morning, Alex woke up feeling groggy and unsettled. The strange phone call from the night before still echoed in his mind, and the sight of the black SUV parked outside his house kept him on edge. He tried to shake it off, but it was hard to ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The day before had been so normal, just helping the elderly couple, but now everything seemed different. As he walked down the stairs for breakfast, his mom noticed his distracted mood. "You okay, Alex?" she asked, noticing the frown on his face. "Yeah, just tired," Alex replied, trying to act normal. He didn't want to worry her. There was no need to, right? It was just a strange phone call. Maybe it was nothing. But his mind kept racing. As he ate, his thoughts kept returning to the elderly couple. Who were they really? Why had they been so nervous when they saw that black SUV? And why was it following him, or at least parked near his house? "Mom, I'm heading out early today," Alex said after finishing breakfast, quickly getting up from the table. "I've got some stuff to take care of." "All right, be careful, sweetie," his mom said, not thinking much of it. Alex grabbed his backpack and hurried outside. He needed some space to think, to clear his mind. But as soon as he stepped outside, he froze. The black SUV was back. It was parked across the street, just like the day before. The tinted windows made it impossible to see inside, but Alex could feel his heart beat faster. It had been there for hours now, and there was no sign of it leaving. Whoever was in that car wasn't just passing through. They were waiting for something, or someone. Alex's eyes darted around, but there was no sign of the elderly couple. Maybe they had noticed the car too, and decided to stay inside. Maybe they knew something Alex didn't. He took a deep breath and began walking down the sidewalk, his pace quickening. He didn't want to be seen near that car. He didn't want anyone, especially the people in that SUV, to know he was watching them. But as he walked further down the street, something caught his attention. A figure. The old man from the elderly couple was standing on the porch of his house, his face pale, and his eyes darting nervously toward the black SUV. His hands were shaking, and his lips were moving, like he was muttering something under his breath. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The man seemed to be saying something, but Alex couldn't make out the words. The old woman wasn't with him. She must still be inside. Before Alex could even think about approaching, the man turned sharply and went back inside, disappearing behind the door. Alex stood still for a moment, watching the house. The SUV across the street remained unmoving, its engine silent now. The entire scene felt too strange, too unsettling to ignore any longer. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a car door slamming. Alex whipped his head around and saw the black SUV slowly roll down the street, its engine starting up again. For a moment, he froze, unsure of what to do. He wanted to follow the car, see where it was going, but he couldn't. If anyone saw him, it would look suspicious. The SUV moved slowly, turning the corner at the end of the block. Alex's pulse quickened. The car had been waiting there for a reason. It wasn't just some random driver passing through. Whoever was inside had been watching him, and possibly the elderly couple. He stood there, frozen, watching the black SUV drive away. His gut told him that this wasn't the end of it. That car would be back. It had to be. Alex's hands were sweaty as he turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, his mind racing. He couldn't get involved. He didn't want to be dragged into whatever this was. But he couldn't help it. He was already in too deep. The elderly couple had thanked him for his kindness, but it was clear now that there was more to their story than Alex could ever have imagined. And the black SUV was just the beginning. The day passed in a blur for Alex, but the weight of the events from the morning lingered. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on him. The black SUV, the elderly couple, and the strange phone call. It all seemed connected, but he had no idea how. Was someone following him? Or was the danger really for the elderly couple, as the mysterious voice had warned him? That evening, Alex decided to stop by the park on his way home from school. He needed to clear his head, but more than that, he had to know if the elderly couple was okay. Something about their nervousness the other day hadn't sat right with him, and he couldn't ignore it. When Alex reached their house, he hesitated at the gate. It seemed quiet. Too quiet. The lights in the house were off, and there was no movement inside. Had they gone out, or was something wrong? He stood there for a moment, staring at the old house, when a sudden noise behind him made him jump. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. Standing at the end of the driveway was a tall figure, a man in a dark coat, watching him intently. Alex froze. The man wasn't someone Alex recognized, and there was something about him that made Alex feel uneasy. His expression was cold, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses despite the fading daylight. "Can I help you?" Alex asked, trying to sound confident even though his voice shook. The man didn't immediately respond. Instead, he took a step closer, his footsteps soft but deliberate. Alex's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively took a small step back. The stranger was tall, broad-shouldered, and gave off a sense of danger that made Alex's stomach churn. "Are you a friend of the couple?" the man asked in a low, gravelly voice. Alex nodded, though he wasn't sure why. "Yeah, I helped them with their groceries the other day," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is everything okay?" The man's lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They've been expecting you," he said, as if the words were meant to be cryptic. "You've gotten too close. It's time to let them go." Alex's mind raced. Who was this guy? And what did he mean by expecting him? What was this all about? "I don't know what you mean," Alex said, his voice growing more uncertain. "I was just trying to help." The man's expression hardened, and he took another step forward. "I'm going to tell you this once, kid. Stay away from them. If you don't, things are going to get a lot more complicated for you." Alex's chest tightened, his breath coming faster now. Was he being threatened? What did this man want? Why was he so insistent on getting Alex to leave the couple alone? Before Alex could respond, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the street. His steps were deliberate, as if he had no intention of looking back. Alex stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. His legs felt like they were made of stone. His mind kept racing with questions, but the answers seemed just out of reach. What was this all about? Who was this man? And why was he so focused on the elderly couple? And most importantly, why had he warned Alex to stay away? Without thinking, Alex quickly turned and walked toward the front door of the elderly couple's house. He needed to talk to them. He had to know if they were involved in something dangerous, or if he was just being paranoid. But as he reached the porch, the door opened suddenly, and there stood the elderly man, his face pale and filled with fear. His eyes were wide with something Alex couldn't place, and for the first time, Alex saw him truly shaken. "Alex, you need to leave," the old man said in a trembling voice, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. "You shouldn't be here. You don't understand what's going on. Please go. It's not safe." "Wait, what do you mean?" Alex asked, his heart pounding. "What's happening? What's going on? Who was that man?" But the old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached out, placing a trembling hand on Alex's shoulder. "You need to forget about all of this. Forget everything. You've done enough." The elderly man's voice cracked, and Alex could see that he was on the verge of tears. It was clear that whatever was going on, it was much bigger than Alex could imagine, and it was too dangerous for him to be involved. Before Alex could respond, the man quickly turned and went back inside, closing the door with a loud thud. Alex stood there, staring at the door, his heart racing in his chest. What had just happened? Why had the old man been so afraid? Was Alex really in danger now, just for helping them? The answers were still out of reach, but one thing was clear: the danger was real. And if Alex didn't get out of it now, he might not get another chance. Alex's mind raced as he walked away from the elderly couple's house, his heart pounding in his chest. What had just happened? Why had the old man been so terrified? And why had that stranger warned him to stay away? Nothing made sense. Alex had only helped the couple out of kindness, but now it seemed like he was tangled in something much bigger and much darker than he ever could have imagined. He walked in a daze, his thoughts a blur. He had to know what was going on. He couldn't just walk away without understanding. There were too many questions. What was it that the elderly couple were hiding? And why was he being warned to stay away? As Alex reached the park near his house, he spotted a familiar face: Jason, his best friend, sitting on a bench, scrolling through his phone. Alex walked over to him, hoping that maybe talking to someone would help clear his mind. "Hey, man, you all right?" Jason asked, looking up and noticing Alex's troubled expression. "I don't know, Jason," Alex replied, sitting down next to him. "Something weird is going on, and I don't know what to do about it." Jason raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. "What are you talking about?" Alex hesitated. He'd never been one to keep secrets from Jason, but this was different. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how dangerous this could be. But he had to tell someone. "It's the elderly couple I helped a few days ago. Ever since I helped them, things have been strange. That black SUV keeps showing up near my house, and last night, some guy called me and told me to stay away from them. Then today, this other guy, some stranger, came up to me and told me to forget about them. He said it wasn't safe." Jason's eyes widened. "What? That's crazy. Are you sure you're not just overthinking it?" "I wish I was," Alex said, running a hand through his hair. "But there's something off about all of this. I know it sounds insane, but I think the couple is involved in something dangerous. They're hiding something." Jason was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly. "You really think you should be involved in this? You don't know what kind of trouble you could be walking into." "I know," Alex said, "but I can't just walk away. Something's happening, Jason, and I have to find out what." Jason sighed and looked at Alex with concern. "All right, I get it. But you have to be careful, man. Whatever this is, it sounds way bigger than we are." "I know, but I have to do something." Alex sat there, lost in thought for a moment. He couldn't ignore what he had seen. The elderly couple, their strange behavior, the black SUV, the mysterious warning. It all pointed to something dark and dangerous. And if he didn't act soon, things might spiral out of control. Suddenly, a thought struck him like a lightning bolt. "Jason, the couple," Alex said, his voice urgent. "They said they had been expecting me. What if they knew I was going to help them? What if this was all planned from the start?" Jason looked confused. "Planned? What do you mean?" "I don't know, but it feels like they've been waiting for me. What if they've been trying to get me involved in whatever's going on? What if they knew someone would come to help?" Jason's eyes narrowed as he thought about it. "Wait, you're telling me you think the couple was using you? Or setting you up?" "I don't know. But I don't think it was just a random act of kindness. There's something about them, something I'm missing. And if I don't figure it out now, I'm going to regret it." Jason looked at Alex with a mix of concern and confusion. "This is starting to sound like a movie or something. But I get it. You need answers. So, what are you going to do?" Alex didn't have an answer yet, but he knew he had to confront the elderly couple one more time. He needed to get to the bottom of this. Whatever secret they were hiding, Alex was determined to find it. He stood up abruptly. "I need to go talk to them again. I have to know what's going on. Will you come with me? I can't do this alone." Jason hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but I'm only doing this because you're my friend. We're in this together, all right?" Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. He didn't want to face whatever was coming alone. And now he didn't have to. Together, they headed back toward the elderly couple's house. The closer they got, the heavier the air seemed to feel. The world around them seemed eerily quiet, as if everything was holding its breath. When they reached the front door, Alex hesitated. He could feel his heart racing. This time, he wasn't just delivering groceries. This time, he was about to confront a secret that could change everything. He knocked once, then waited, his hands clammy. He tried to steady his breathing as the door slowly creaked open. But it wasn't the elderly couple who answered. Standing in the doorway was a woman, mid-40s, dressed in a dark suit, her face cold and unwelcoming. She didn't smile. She didn't say a word. She just stared at Alex, her eyes piercing and intense. "Who are you?" Alex asked, his voice low. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped aside, silently inviting them into the house. Alex exchanged a confused glance with Jason, then stepped inside. The air inside was thick with tension. The room was dimly lit, the only sound the soft creaking of the floorboards beneath their feet. The elderly couple was nowhere to be seen. And then the woman spoke, her voice cold and clear. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Alex." Alex felt a chill run down his spine as the woman's words hung in the air. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Alex." He glanced at Jason, who seemed equally confused and uneasy. The house was eerily silent, and the dim light from the single overhead bowl cast long shadows on the walls. The atmosphere felt wrong, almost suffocating. The woman didn't seem in any rush to explain herself. Instead, she just stood there, her arms crossed, watching them intently. Her gaze was sharp, like she was studying every movement they made, every word they said. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, trying to steady his breath. His heart was racing and his palms were sweating. He couldn't tell if it was the woman's presence or the mystery of the entire situation that was making him so nervous. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she motioned for them to follow her into the living room, where the elderly couple now sat on a worn leather couch. The old man looked just as nervous as before, and the old woman sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap. They both looked up at Alex, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and regret. "Alex," the elderly man began, his voice shaky, "we should have told you the truth from the beginning. But we couldn't. You were never meant to be involved in this." The words hit Alex like a ton of bricks. Never meant to be involved. He had helped them without a second thought. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness would pull him into something so dangerous. "Who are you people?" Alex asked, his voice shaky now. He had to know. There were too many unanswered questions, and it was clear that whatever was going on was bigger than he could have imagined. The woman stepped forward, standing beside the elderly couple. She let out a slow breath and finally spoke. "We're not who you think we are," she said flatly. "We're part of something much larger, something that, until now, has been hidden in the shadows. And you," she looked at Alex with a serious expression, "you were never supposed to find out." Alex's head spun as he processed her words. "What do you mean?" he repeated, his voice rising with frustration. "What are you involved in? Why has this black SUV been following me? Why did I get that warning phone call? What does this all have to do with me?" The woman exchanged a glance with the elderly couple, who both looked away, guilt written all over their faces. She sighed deeply, then turned back to Alex. "Do you remember what happened a few days ago, when you helped us carry our groceries?" she asked, her voice almost soft, like she was choosing her words carefully. Alex nodded. "Yeah, I remember. That wasn't a random act of kindness. We didn't just need help with groceries," she continued. "We needed someone to notice us, to help us, because we knew that danger was coming. And we knew you would come through. Alex felt a wave of confusion wash over him. But why me? I'm just some kid. You didn't even know me. We didn't need to know you, the woman said, her tone suddenly colder. We needed someone with a pure heart. Someone who would act without hesitation, without questioning. Someone who could be trusted. Jason stepped forward, looking just as confused as Alex. So, you wanted him to help you. You set this up. The elderly man nodded slowly, his voice low. We didn't have a choice. You see, we're not ordinary people, Alex. We've been part of something. A project. Really. Something that's been running for decades. And it's something that, once you're involved, you can never escape. Alex was struggling to keep up. A project. What kind of project? The woman glanced at the old couple, then back at Alex. A project that involves things most people don't understand. Things that some would call research. Things that others would call dangerous. And we're all part of it, but the time has come for it to end. She paused, letting her words sink in. Alex felt his breath catch in his throat. Was this some kind of experiment? Was he being used as a pawn in something much bigger? The black SUV, the woman continued, is the organization that has been monitoring us for years. They want to control the project. They want to make sure no one gets out. And now, they're after you because you're involved. Alex's stomach twisted in knots. This was too much. It couldn't be real. There was no way. Are you saying that I'm involved in some kind of secret experiment? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That you guys set me up. The woman nodded. Not intentionally. You were never supposed to be in danger. But by helping us, by showing us kindness, you've become a part of something you can't walk away from. The elderly couple, still sitting silently, exchanged a look. The old woman spoke for the first time in a while, her voice trembling. We've been running from the truth for so long, she said softly. And now it's your turn to face it. Alex felt his head spin. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the room began to feel smaller and smaller. There were no simple answers, no easy escape. Everything he thought he knew was crumbling around him. The woman stepped toward him. I'm sorry for involving you in this, but you need to understand something. You can't undo what's been done. You can't change the past. The people who are after you won't stop until they get what they want. And the only way out is to go deeper. Alex swallowed hard. What do you mean, go deeper? There's a place, the woman replied. A hidden location where everything started. If you want to survive, if you want to protect the people you care about, you need to find it before they do. Jason looked at Alex, his expression filled with concern. You're telling me we're supposed to go after these people? What kind of madness is this? The woman's eyes hardened. It's not madness. It's survival. The room fell silent again. Alex's mind was reeling, unable to process everything at once. But one thing was clear. His life had just taken a turn he wasn't prepared for. And now, there was no turning back. Alex's heart was pounding in his chest. The room felt like it was closing in on him. Every word the woman spoke cutting through his mind like a blade. He tried to process everything she had just told him. But the more he thought about it, the more his head spun. A secret project, dangerous people after him, a hidden location where everything began. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. His life had changed in an instant, and there was no going back now. I don't get it, Alex said, his voice shaky. You want me to find this place, but how? How am I supposed to do that? The woman's cold gaze softened, but only slightly. You've already started, Alex. You're already in deeper than you realize. The key to everything lies in your actions. You helped us, and that was enough for them to notice you. Jason, who had been quiet up until now, suddenly spoke up. What do you mean? Notice him. What is this really about? Are we talking about some kind of government experiment, or something even worse? The woman gave a small, grim smile. It's bigger than that. And no, it's not just some government project. This is far beyond anything you can imagine. What you've stumbled into is far more dangerous than you think. Alex could feel the weight of her words pressing on him. The black SUV, the mysterious warnings, the cryptic phone call. It was all making sense now, but none of it felt real. He looked at Jason, who seemed just as lost, then back at the elderly couple, whose faces were etched with regret and fear. They had been hiding this secret for so long, and now it was on him to finish it. The first step, the woman continued, is to find out where the project truly began. There's a location, hidden in plain sight, that holds all the answers. It's your only chance. Where? Alex asked, desperation creeping into his voice. The woman's eyes darkened. That's the hard part. You'll have to follow the clues. You'll have to dig deeper, just like you did when you helped us. But be warned, there are people who will stop at nothing to make sure you never find it. They'll do anything to protect their secret. Suddenly, a sound interrupted the tension in the room. A loud bang from outside, followed by the screech of tires. Alex's head snapped toward the window, his blood running cold. He could see the black SUV in the distance, parked at the end of the street. This time, it wasn't just sitting there. It was moving, slowly but steadily, as if waiting for the right moment to make its move. They found you, the woman said, her voice low and urgent. They know you're close. They won't let you get away. Alex turned to Jason, his mind racing. We need to get out of here. Now. Without another word, the two of them bolted for the door. The elderly couple, still sitting on the couch, exchanged a look, the old man's face filled with sorrow. Please, Alex, the old man pleaded. You don't understand. They'll come for you. It's too dangerous. But Alex didn't have time to listen. He had already stepped out onto the porch, Jason right behind him. The air was thick with tension, and the black SUV was still parked at the end of the street, its headlights now flickering on. We need to move fast, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. We have to get to that place, the one they were talking about. Jason nodded, though his face was full of doubt. But how do we even know where to start looking? I don't know yet, Alex admitted, but we have to try. We don't have a choice. The two of them turned and ran down the street, trying to stay out of sight. The black SUV remained motionless, its tinted windows making it impossible to see who was inside. Alex's pulse raced as he glanced over his shoulder. He didn't know how much time they had before the SUV started moving, but they couldn't afford to be caught. They ducked into a nearby alley, their breath coming in short gasps. The night air was cold against Alex's skin, but the adrenaline was keeping him focused. The sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. Someone was following them. We can't keep running, Jason panted, looking back nervously. We need a plan. I know, Alex said, looking around frantically. I'll figure it out, but we need to keep moving. Stay close. They took off again, running faster now, not sure where they were going but knowing they couldn't stay in one place for too long. They turned corner after corner, weaving through the streets, trying to shake whoever was tailing them. The black SUV was still close behind, but Alex couldn't tell if it was actually following them or if it was just waiting for the right moment. I think we lost them, Jason said, glancing over his shoulder. But what now? Where do we go from here? Alex stopped for a moment to catch his breath, then turned to Jason with a determined look. We have to get to the old warehouse on the outskirts of town. It's the only place I can think of where we might find some answers. Jason looked doubtful, but he didn't argue. All right, lead the way. The two of them took off again, moving quickly toward the old warehouse. It was a place Alex had heard about in passing, a rundown building that had once been used for storage, but now stood empty. It seemed like the kind of place where something hidden could be kept away from prying eyes. As they neared the warehouse, The eerie quiet of the streets began to feel oppressive. It was as if everything had stopped. No cars on the road, no people walking by. Only the distant sound of the black SUV still following them, still waiting for its moment. When they reached the warehouse, Alex's heart was pounding. He pushed open the heavy door, which creaked loudly, and stepped inside. The place was dark and musty, filled with shadows. They couldn't waste any time. Alex could feel that they were being hunted, and the only way to stay ahead of the game was to find the answers before the people following them did. "We need to find anything that can point us in the right direction," Alex said, his voice echoing in the empty space. Jason nodded, and together, they began to search the warehouse. They didn't know exactly what they were looking for, but they had to find something, anything, that would give them a clue about the project and the people chasing them. Time was running out.